Good morning, everyone, and thank you so much for joining us. This is the first time we're trying a webinar like this at the Downtown Winnipeg BIZ. It was really important for us, as we've been chatting with businesses over the last few weeks, to provide some additional help and try to answer questions. We're coming to you live from Bell MTS Place right now, who offered up some space for us, some safe space, as well as technology. So that we're really grateful for that. Our Wi-Fi at the Downtown BIZ isn't always reliable, as I'm sure some people are dealing with, as we're all trying to figure out these video calls and everyone's logging on and trying to connect at the same time. We really know that this is a difficult time for everyone, and we want to recognize all of the efforts that business owners in Winnipeg are making right now, not only to adapt your business model, but to connect with the community and support one another. I've just seen some amazing things happening, from Fet Ice Cream downtown doing special deliveries for deserving Winnipeggers to people supporting one another. It's what we do here in Winnipeg. Today for us, it's really about figuring this out together. We've got some folks joining us today to have a conversation. We want this to be a discussion. And the purpose of this webinar is really to provide you with some best practice guidelines and advice on what you can be doing as a business right now that can help set you up to recover as quickly as possible when we get to the other side of COVID-19. So we can get started. Really, the first half hour, we're going to be answering a few questions and hearing from our panelists, and we want to make sure we have the last half hour for you to answer your question or ask your questions. So we'll get started. I want to introduce Jay Shaw, who is the Assistant Chief of Emergency Management and Public Information for Winnipeg Fire Paramedic Service. Hi, Jay. And Jose Lemoyne, Chief Operating Officer and Strategy Leader for Back Swath Management. Good morning, Jose. Thanks for joining us. And Sachit Mehra, co-owner and manager of East India Company Pub and Eatery, who has operated a downtown restaurant for nearly 30 years. And I look forward to the day when we can get back to that buffet, Sachit.
You and me both.
Yeah, you are doing delivery and takeout, though, so that is a key thing. I think Winnipeggers are really finding unique ways to support businesses right now. A lot of businesses are doing curbside takeout, pickup, and delivery, as well as retail. So as I mentioned, we want this to be a discussion. We're going to begin with some thoughts on our panel, but we do want to hear from you. So if you look at the right side of your screen, I believe it should be showing up on the right side. It's the go-to webinar control panel where you can ask your questions, and it should be as simple as clicking on an orange arrow to expand that control panel, and from there you can type your questions in. Feel free to type your questions in at any time. We do have one of our BIZ team monitoring those that can share them with me. It's really amazing how quickly we're learning all of this new technology. And again, if we can't answer your questions here today, we will do our very best to follow up with you after that. So if we get started here, we really want to talk about the three things that we've been hearing from businesses that are so important, and that is cash, continuity, and clarity. So if we start thinking about clarity, and given the current climate that we're in, the recommendations from Manitoba Public Health for social distancing, to stay home and work from home if it's possible. We know a lot of people, including our public health professionals, are really on the front lines of this, so we're all working together. And we think about the order for some businesses that have had to change, whether it's reducing their hours, limiting capacity, or closing altogether. It's a challenging time for everyone, for sure. Jay, maybe if we start with you, when we're thinking about what should business owners be focused on right now in the middle of this crisis, what are some key things that you would suggest?
Thanks for having me. Is the sound okay? Everything's good. Okay, so thanks for having me. I kind of focused this on sort of, I put some thought into trying to help out a little bit here, and I got sort of 5 things that I'll just go over kind of quickly, and then they may be able to frame some of the discussion. But the first thing I want to preface is that we're going to be in this for a while. This is several months of social distancing. Everyone's heard the term flatten the curve, but what people need to realize is that flattening the curve actually elongates this pandemic. So it makes it longer, but it puts less strain on the healthcare system. So the best thing to do is to save lives. The next best thing to do is to protect the economy. The problem is for businesses is that when you flatten the curve, there is an elongation of what this pandemic situation will go through. And we probably have, depending on the modeling that you look at, several more months of social distancing. And because of that, I've sort of framed this in sort of 5 unique sort of areas. And the first one is be ready for the bounce. So what does that mean? Well, resiliency is your ability to be able to bounce back from an event or a disaster. So resiliency is defined as the ability to bounce back in times of disaster or hardship. Your overall preparedness can help mitigate your losses. However, if you took a hit, you need to know that those that are going to be first to the post. So what does that mean? It means that if you're first to the post, if you're first in line to be able to get back open again, you're going to be able to get out of the gate faster, and you're going to have a higher chance or early success when things start to normalize. So learn about the Waffle House Index. So us in the emergency manager world talk about a small little restaurant chain. It's not that small, but a restaurant chain in the States called the Waffle House. And we actually joke about the Waffle House Index because that restaurant chain never closes. It was stayed open through storms and hurricanes and pretty much everything, even if they're only serving toast and coffee. And they built up really good business continuity plans, and they're always ready for the bounce, and they're always ready to come back strong. So Google Waffle House and learn a little bit about the Waffle House Index. The second point is there's going to be a new normal. This is world changing, and you need to figure out how the world is going to change for you as an entrepreneur. So in the span of a week, we had thousands of employees in the city of Winnipeg go home. Cities, governments, businesses are going to have to look at new realities of why are we doing things the old way. There's going to be a new order, a new process. There's going to be a new innovation, and that leads to the third point, that innovation will be key. Someone is going to win the award for why didn't I think about this? So it should be you. It should be you as a local Winnipeg entrepreneur. We're already seeing craft beer companies make hand sanitizer. What other innovative strategies can you think about? Two more quick points. Amplify your advocacy. So that's what Kate is doing right now. She is amplifying the advocacy to be able to make sure that you know what you can do, what programs and funding you have access to, work together, talk, share information. And then my last point is to take care of your people. So I speak from the lens of leadership here when I say we lead people and we manage things. It's never a failure of communication. I always feel it's a failure of leadership. So we have to be able to communicate with our staff. If you lose all your staff and you're not communicating and supporting them, your recovery is going to take that much longer. So basically, be ready for the bounce. There's going to be a new normal. You need to figure out how you fit into it. Innovation is going to be the key. Amplify your advocacy and take care of your people. And I think that if people do that, they're going to at least put the left foot in front of the right foot, and they're going to get through this. So that's sort of my beginning. Thank you.
Those are some really great points that provide some focus for this discussion, Jay. Thank you. Jose, when you're thinking about when you're working with businesses in this time right now, what should businesses be focused on? Jay talked about, communicating with employees, even if they're not working with you right now, but that was important. What else do you think that is important that businesses should be doing at this time?
Right. I probably should add as well that I'm also co-owner of the business, so probably an important differentiation as well. So I'm living through it in 2 ways. We've got a team of 10 people that we've also, everybody's working from home. Some of them were used to it already because we do have a virtual team. But certainly it was the tough decision to get everyone to work from home. And then if I take it from a clarity perspective, it was very important for everyone to understand, is my role going to change if I work from home? And for some people, the role in the company did not change at all. And others that were in more of a support role, it did become a little bit more of a switch, because where they're used to seeing people every day and getting kind of work from someone, now we had to kind of create that virtual office. And so it was about staying connected. but without overdoing that connectedness. So we're a Microsoft Office shop. We've embraced Teams very quickly. It's been an awesome tool for us to stay connected. The first week was very much about, giving updates and making sure everybody had what they needed to work from home. And now that we've got that established, a couple of weeks into it, it really is about trying to create that new normal. And to Jay's point a little earlier, it really is about innovating. We've always said we want to be kind of a virtual group, and so that really catapulted us into being this virtual group and connecting with our clients in a different way. And it's been actually very positive that way. So for me, it's been very much about making sure that everybody's role is still clearly understood. Fortunately, we have not had to reduce anybody's work week or change their role altogether. But it really is about that connectedness, and then the technology and working together.
That's great, thank you. Sachin, you've been in business for almost 30 years with a downtown restaurant. Have you ever experienced anything remotely like this?
So this is I want to say my 27th, 28th year going in. We've got locations in Winnipeg and Ottawa, so 3 restaurants, almost 700 seats between the 3 locations. I know as a professional business person, we've lived through SARS, swine flu, H1N1, various financial crises. I've never seen a response like we have out there right now, and a challenge faced by society and certainly the economy as well. It's unprecedented. And I think, having said that, as a business on the ground, and I said this a little earlier before the comm started, the first week or so we were learning hour by hour. I think now we're learning day by day, and you're moving on with that cycle. There's still lots going on. The challenge is huge at a small business level. All those employees that I mentioned before, I mean, they're key to our business, and for us and our business continuity. Whether this is going to be 30 days or 60 days or 90 days out, making sure that we're still the same East India Company today on the 30-day cycle that we are on the 90-day cycle is absolutely key to making sure that we can be a success on this. So there's a lot of key points that I'll get into it as we go on, but for starters, that's where we are.
Sachin, maybe let's just stick with you for a moment and let's talk about cash. That is one of the biggest concerns that we're hearing from businesses right now. I think in the beginning, maybe seeing a drop in business by about 40% for some business owners, and even more so now. So if the cash isn't coming in, but you still have bills to pay like utilities and rent, we know a lot of rent is going to be due this Wednesday, April 1st. How are you managing that? What advice do you have, and what is the process that you're going through?
Let me speak to every business owner out there, whether you're in downtown, in Winnipeg, in Manitoba, across Canada. I know you are feeling the same pain that I am. It was not a 40% loss in business. It was not a 50% loss in business. In our case, it was a 95% loss in business. We are out. We closed on the 16th before it was an obligation anywhere. That was on the Monday. We decided that the safety of our guests and our staff was absolutely paramount, and we did not want to be a contributing vector in any transmission, and so we stopped our business. We're a dine-in buffet restaurant. We're well known for it in all our locations, and we went to strictly takeout as well, which is not a huge part of our business, but it required that we would have to adapt to just doing that part of the business alone. What that meant has in the interim is there's no cash coming anymore. So what do? In a key for a small business owner, the word is defer. So what can you defer? And you start with some of the biggest components. In our case, and I think for a lot of small businesses that do have retail storefront, it's going to be a rent. So have a discussion with your landlord. That absolutely has to happen. And whether it's a deferral or an abatement, which would be phenomenal, you need to have that conversation. I think the second conversation you're having is with yourself in terms of what staffing levels are absolutely required now. Now, in our case, we haven't laid anybody off. We've kept all our staff because we've got an eye on making sure we're ready to go the second that we can open up again. But I think for a lot of small businesses, there's going to be a decision that's going to need to be made for what staff do I need to keep on, what's critical, and how can I move forward. I know there's some good programs out there now on the federal government that are rolling out. I know details are still coming out there that may be good for businesses to be able to still retain those people and offset some of their costs. That's a good one. Lastly, I would recommend, if you have supplier chains right now that are coming in and that are providing, these are also your partners, and they always have been in business as well. Contact them, figure out if there's somewhere you can reduce costs, if there is some deals that you can make back and forth that are opportune for you and them. I think that makes a lot of sense.
That's great, Jay. When we're talking about disaster recovery, which is what you are well experienced in, and that is your area of expertise, how does that tie to what we're seeing today, and what should businesses be looking at when we're talking about just the monetary side of this?
So just to add on to Satch's point, which I think blends into the next question, is around our supply chain. I think the world is really found out that we had a supply chain issue where we had a real dependency on China and on our supply chain, and we really need, from a big business all the way down to a small business perspective, we really need to stay connected to our supply chain and logistics so that we can redevelop what those relationships look like. When we talked about those 5 points, taking care of your people, that is also your external people. And to Satch's point, if you're not reaching out to your supply chain right now and saying, hey, I need to be number one when you guys get back online and start delivering, I need to know where I am to be able to get my product, to be able to get my services out. I want to know that those relationships are strong. If you're not reaching out and making those connections and conversations and supporting each other and saying, how can we help you? You're not going to be ready for the bounce, and you're not going to be first out of the gate. So I think those are the type of things that conversations and relationships right now are critical, and those that are putting the positive on this and reaching out and having those conversations are going to be some of the first people that have the ability to have resiliency and rebound.
And that really is important to be set up while we're trying to manage the cash flow right now, just simply to stay afloat and figuring out who to call and who to contact and what programs are available. Jose, when you're advising clients and businesses and looking at strategy, are there things specifically around cash flow or anything like that that businesses can be doing right now?
Well, you certainly still want to be true to your business, so you don't want to lose sight of who you are. But to touch on both Jason and Satchit mentioned, it's also an opportunity to innovate, really force you to think a little bit further with how can you evolve your business. And we've seen that in some groups that have gotten quite creative with curbside pickup, even for retail clothing stores, for example. You know, you can see it online and we'll deliver it to your car window. So who would have thought that you would have done that with retail? You see a lot more people trying to think from a cash flow perspective. Why not get a jump on your Christmas gift card sales, you know, so you can sell some gift cards for later on, while providing the assurance that you will still be there so that they can cash those gift cards in, of course. And there's also a lot of companies out there, when you talk about amplifying the advocacy earlier on, Jay, you know, bold commerce, for example. They have online platforms, so they've gone and are supporting business owners in innovating in that way as well, trying to give them access to some platforms that they may not have used before. And so, I'd be repeating some of the comments that have already been made, deferring, expenses that you may not need right now, taking the time to really evaluate what is the core business that you've got. And kudos to you, Sachin, for keeping all your employees. That is a very strong message to the team. And when we talk about continuity and being able to, get up and go, probably what you need to look at when you are doing something like that is, to Jay's comment earlier, is that by flattening the curve, we're actually lengthening it as well. So I think it's important to not lose sight of your finances and the plans that you did have, and evaluate with more regularity kind of your best case, mid case, worst case, so that you can make decisions in a timely fashion. So I think a comment I made to the team earlier was keep your wits about you. So, stay grounded and keep making those sound decisions. And nobody said these were going to be easy decisions, but there are programs out there that are coming out, even reminding your teams, your staff, if you were able to provide health benefits to them, they have access to employee assistance programs, so you don't have to carry all of it yourself. You can remind people of the other services that are available.
Thank you, Jose. And oh yeah, that's it.
Okay, so just one comment as well, because again, from a small business standpoint, we talked a little bit about deferring, but there is a comment also to be made in terms of what can we bring in at a time like this. And usually, if your paradigm has changed, and for example, ours has changed a little bit. We've gone from a dine-in restaurant to just completely takeout. And how do you get your message out? And of course, the common answer for everyone usually is, well, let's just social media. Well, the problem for social media right now at the local level is it is inundated. It is absolutely inundated at max. So it becomes very hard to differentiate yourself and be that local play, or be that food play, whatever that is. So what works? Let me show you something that works, and it's been working over the last 100 years. It's this guy here. Just a telephone. Pick it up. Call some of your past, in our case, some of your past catering guests. Call some of your past guests that have dined in, friends, family, whoever it is, and the message is simple: put in an order, or do this, or do that, and help the business out. And it's incredible the response you'll get. Your response will be 95%. Everybody will put an order, everyone will support. You're never going to get a no. So if you're a very small business and you're on the ground and you're looking for that support on the level, don't be afraid to be direct. You have to be direct. You have to go out there, and this is the time. And I think you'll find a lot of advantage there. So cut what you can on this side and maximize with the thing that made your business a star in the first place, and that's you making those calls and going out there and hitting the ground again. Thank you.
That's great advice. And I think we really are seeing Winnipeggers looking for ways to support local. I know at Downtown Winnipeg BIZ, we've been posting on our website and updating twice daily what businesses are doing, if they're doing delivery or takeout. If you can call them up and order books online. I know BIZ Books is doing increased deliveries as well. And we talked about innovation as well. We're seeing athletic therapists from Movement Lab that you can now get a physical or athletic therapy consultation online. So it is really forcing that rapid innovation, which is trying to figure out, here's maybe what your product was before, and that was your business. And as Jose mentioned, staying true to who you are, but finding other ways to do that, I think is really important. And that's great advice from all of you. When we're looking again at continuity, and how to come out the other side of this and be successful. Jay, you mentioned right at the beginning that whoever is ready out of the gate first has a better chance at surviving. We think about, looking at downtown specifically, we saw the impacts immediate. When workers were told to work from home if they could, downtown became very quiet. We know a lot of our businesses, the primary customer base is downtown workers. Businesses throughout Winnipeg are obviously feeling pressure and stress right now, and everyone is trying to figure this out. And we know Winnipeggers are looking for ways to support local, which we've just seen some fantastic stories out there on that front. Jay, when you're chatting with people and you're looking at from the city perspective as well, we know that governments can't recover until the economy does, that people need to be able to put food on the table and that businesses need to be successful. So what are the things that you think about when we're looking at the continuity, when we're looking at when we do get to the other side of this, likely a few months, maybe more, what suggestions do you have for planning right now? You had mentioned supply chain. Are there other points and things that businesses should be considering?
Well, I think to add on to what Satchit was saying in terms of keeping really close ties on your employees, there's going to be a lot of people job shopping. When the chain reaction of this recovery boom starts, there's going to be individuals that are going to be looking for opportunity. You need to be the place that they want to work. You need to be the place where it's going to be innovative and it's going to be the new best place to want to go and secure your financial future by working at this new location. So I think from a business owner, we still need to take care of our people. Supply chain issue is going to be rapid. So what happens is there's going to be a chain reaction in the recovery, and you're going to start seeing all the machine of the global economy come back down into the provincial, federal, provincial, and municipal type of lenses. And you're going to see all these restaurants and all these other sectors in the downtown, all the firms and accounting firms and everything get fired up again. And those that took care of their people are going to be able to retain them. And if you lose a lot of your high performers, what's going to happen to you is that internal knowledge that you have in your business, you're going to lose it, you're going to slow down, and it's going to take you that much longer to be able to recover because the staff that you had are gone, they're on to greener pastures. So take care of your people, lead, communicate, and be ready to be out the gate first, because it's going to happen. I don't think it's going to happen over the next few weeks, but there will be, the sun is going to come out again. And when it does, be ready for the bounce, because if you're first in line, you're going to have a better shot.
And so it really is doing some things now to set up for that success. Also, one point that just came in that I want to share, and then we'll go over to Jose on continuity, from Assiniboine Credit Union, actually, that has shared a good suggestion here to approach your financial institution to talk about deferring debt payments. And the option there is they can defer up to 6 months. So that's something in a consideration there. So if there's any business out there that is a member of ACU, it sounds like they're opening up the phone lines to have that discussion. And we're hearing that really from financial institutions in Canada. Everyone is trying to figure out how they can support this. We have another question coming in around EI that we can discuss a little bit later as well. We won't have all the details on the federal government programs, but I think that's something good that we can discuss, because it is another one of the supports that's out there. Jose, just over to you on continuity first before we get to questions from participants. And to the participants, please feel free to send in your questions at any time. We have a couple here, but definitely you can send them in, and we'll try and get through all of them before our time is up. Jose, when you're talking about continuity and working with clients, but thinking about your own business as well, you had mentioned that a lot of you are able to work from home, and that's what a lot of folks are doing. Not everyone has that option. What are some other things that businesses or questions that they should be asking themselves right now to prepare a couple months down the road?
Right. Well, and certainly strategy is just as much about what you are going to do and sometimes what you aren't going to do. Probably the biggest decision is what you aren't going to do. But I think it's important, again, to keep track of what those key business drivers are, understanding what those are today and how those might change. And then I still think that you need to be able to prepare what I'll call different scenarios of what this might look like. So, we talked about maybe a 30-day, and then, you've heard perhaps till the end of May, and some people are saying, it might go till the end of June. Taking the time to look at what the impacts are of that, how long can you make what you're currently doing continue? Because some businesses are doing quite well in this time because they are providing a support. Say technology companies, they've probably had a little boom as they've been supporting people. So it really is about understanding what these elements might be. So we talk about deferring payments. They're deferred. They're not absolved. So if you defer, what's the impact on the other end coming out? So you may not want to defer them all. You may want to defer only some of them. And there's the deferral at the business level, and then there's also about depending on the employees, what they could defer. So it really is about looking at that projection, those projections, those scenarios, and some of you might feel a little bit like a startup again when you come out of this. And go back to when you first started your business, and what are some of those lessons learned that you said, oh, I wish I would have done this, better. Well, now you get a second chance. You get to learn from those first mistakes and apply that. And I say it, kind of, I'm laughing, but you have experience now. So what are some of the things that you can do better moving forward?
That's great, Jose. And Sachet, anything else on continuity that you'd like to add?
Maybe just a couple of points. You mentioned early on when we came on that I've been doing this for 30 years. And the reality is our family's been in this business for 47 years, and I'm the third generation. What's made us a success in part is due to the fact that we haven't changed. Our goal has always been to do really excellent Indian food with good service on the ground. And although it would seem, and this would apply to any small business out there, and it becomes really a heightened challenge because your goal is being challenged. There seemingly is a renegotiation, if you will, of the social contract in our society right now. Distance, capacities, traveling, gathering, these are all up for debate and discussion right now. And we've seen this before. We saw it at H1N1, we saw it at SARS. But the reality is, as the curve will flatten out, so will this discussion down the road as well. And so my point there ultimately is, if you started your particular business with a certain passion and a certain idea set, don't forget that, right? That is your key driver and your key component, and you want to make sure that you do ultimately stay true to that, right? Do the things you have to do now, be nimble, be agile, adapt where you can, but at the end of the day, your original success was the idea and the concept that made you start in the first place and kept you going. So make sure that's the same thing that gets out on the other side. I do just want to also comment one more thing on timeline. And it was maybe to Jay and Jose's point as well. This is not going to be 30 days. Maybe personally, I wish it was. I don't think it's going to be 60 days, but just after that, I think is where we're looking. So if somebody's looking for a concrete date, and I was going to guess, that would be my spaghetti at the wall guess. And that's a very long time for a small business to have their head underwater, if you will, right? But if you're thinking and you're making decisions around that, that's the time. And if you're a business based on a supply chain, you need leather for leather wallets, or paper for making cards. Please make sure the other person is ready as well, because if you lose them, you also lose your own business as well. So you want to make sure that that chain's going to be ready to go as well. Thank you.
Jay, yeah, go ahead, Jay.
I was unmuting my microphone. Just to add on to that too, do not discredit risk perception here and perception of the choices that you make. We have seen early on in this, businesses, large and small, make decisions that the perception from the public they didn't agree with, and you need to think about what those decisions are going to off of a sounding board look like. They may be good decisions, but from a perception of others, you know, if you're going to pay or not pay individuals, if you're going to open or not open, those decisions are going to be the new reality, and perception is going to potentially hurt you. We have a saying that culture eats strategy for breakfast, and risk perception is part of that. I'll say you will be judged now in your business world on how you sanitize, clean, and disinfect things. You've never been judged on those things before. These are the things that you will be part of our new lexicon and this new world order of where we start to recover. So there's going to be new things that from a perception, people will be valuing on. When you start seeing all the ratings that come out on different businesses, you're going to see, you're going to have to be very careful that you're watching and see where the trends are, because individuals are going to be judging you differently now. And some of those could be around sanitization, cleaning, and disinfecting. And internally too, from your own employees. How are you keeping your employees safe? I think occupational health professionals are gonna, you know, double and triple in size over the next couple of years as we see some of the these new rules put in place. So just to add on to what Satchit said. So thank you.
That's a great point. I think for us too, we've got a fairly large team at the Downtown Winnipeg BIZ, almost 70 employees, many of them frontline operations. And we're trying to make sure that we're making the right decisions to protect their safety and the safety of everyone downtown. And it is about the social distancing and following all those recommendations. But we had to think differently. How are we going to manage our team? You know, everyone was punching in on the same punch clock. So we had to change the way we're doing that and reducing contact. We had twice daily briefings with our teams in the morning and the evening before they would go out onto the streets. And so, you know, reducing that gathering and using technology however we can. It's definitely a different climate out there. We're seeing it downtown already. Our teams are still operating, trying to keep downtown as clean and safe as we possibly can at this time, but also providing visible presence on the street. We know that there is a real risk with the less activity that there is on the street, and we're seeing that across our city. There is a greater risk to businesses. So also on our website, in conjunction with Winnipeg Police Service, there are some tips there. So if your business has closed, there are things that you can be doing as well to protect your business, leaving the lights on, making sure you're removing cash. So we've got a whole list of tips there. I want to take some time now. We're past the half hour point, and it is going by quite quickly, to look at some of the questions here that we're getting. One of them is from Suzanne from Mariner Neptune Fish and Seafood, a wholesale distributor. So we're talking about supply chains and how important that is, I'm sure, for restaurants. The question is around EI. Now, we won't have the details on the government supports, but the question was, is there any offer from EI for employers and employees that are not laying off but reducing hours? We do know that the federal government has made some changes that was just announced on Friday, I believe, for supports for employers that are still keeping employees on, and more details are coming on that later today. Is that something that Satchit, I know you mentioned that you still have your full team on, so you haven't had to figure out the EI path yet, but obviously a lot of businesses are concerned about their employees, and are there other things that we can be looking at doing to assist?
So the EI strategy right now is, again, for small business owners out there, I'm looking at you. The EI strategy is changing on seemingly a daily basis. You've got your traditional EI, which is going to be 55%. Your employees are going to have to wait about 10, 11 days. You will need to provide a record of employment, and they will be on their way. Seemingly, this is changing now. The government's announced essentially keeping your employee on, and they will cover up to 75%, up from the 10% before that would come out of your source deductions that you would normally make. Now, having said all that, we don't have the details, Kate, as you mentioned. So those details should be out seemingly sometime today, up until Wednesday, and then we can see where that goes. And it's a good move. I think it'll help employees and employers alike. There's also a program that requires a little bit of setup that can allow you to cover even north of that number, of that 75% number, but it requires a bit of accounting and lawyer work that had to be done in advance. Again, if you have an accountant, I would suggest that you call that person up and have a chat with that person, and that might be an option for some employers as well. And lastly, I understand there's another program that's out as well that will cover those that are staying at home, taking care of people that may have come down as well. Not directly EI, certainly, but certainly a benefit out there as well. Please go to the Service Canada website and you will see all the up-to-date information with its requisites that have rolled out. So you're not taking it from me, but certainly there.
I want to point also to some of our partners that are also working extremely hard right now to support businesses in Winnipeg. Both the Winnipeg Chamber of Commerce and Economic Development Winnipeg have really great resource kits on their websites with direct links to the programs and supports. I know our team has been working to keep those updated, but they are changing so rapidly. So we would definitely point you to those resource sites. And Sachin mentioned the government is changing and adding things every day, and the details, more details should be coming out today. Another question here from Gita, asking if we'd be able to direct her to resources on how to develop a business continuity plan that can be presented to a board of directors. And I think that's a real challenge as well. One resource that I would point folks to is BDC has a great link, and we'll try and get that up on social media here shortly and on our website as well. BDC has a link on a number of tips and information on business continuity planning. And it is a challenge for those that may have a board of directors as well, trying to keep everyone up to date as things are changing so rapidly. We have another question here regarding deferral from Joel Waterman. Are we aware of any anticipated announcements from the city regarding the deferral of business and property taxes? I know we have seen that in other cities, and I know the city of Winnipeg is working on various programs, including deferrals of taxes. So we do expect something maybe coming there soon. I see Jay nodding as well. Jay has been managing the press conferences with great expertise with Mayor Brian Bowman. And I think it's a little bit more challenging, my understanding, because our business tax and property taxes, it is tied in with the school tax. So there's a little bit more layers that some other cities are facing. But I know in our conversation with the mayor's office that they are looking at all ways to help. The city did just announce on Friday some additional changes and support, including around parking, 1 hour free parking downtown, as well as adding curbside pickup locations. So that's really 15 minutes free. So delivery drivers can move quickly, get easy access, and provide that contactless delivery. We have another question here that I'd like to put to our panels. Oh, Jay would like to add something before we go on to the next question. Go ahead, Jay.
Just adding, Kate, that we also did announce in our last press conference that the mayor will be looking to bring council together to take a look at some of those options. I would strongly encourage all the participants on this webinar to pay attention to the provincial 1 o'clock press conferences today, tomorrow, the next day, and the city ones as information is coming out all the time. We are literally going at the speed of hour by hour, minute by minute with announcements, and after trying to assess in terms of what things were. In terms of how we dealt with the playgrounds and play structures, we stayed true to what the province was doing, and then when the province all of a sudden decided, yep, it's time to start thinking about closing the social distancing around those areas, then the city acted as well too. The province really is the lead on a lot of the decisions around public safety and health. And the city obviously is trying to support it as much as possible. But I strongly encourage folks to pay attention to the announcements that are happening every day. There will be more announcements today by the province. There's always announcements. So pay attention to what those are. And then I would dedicate one of your staff members to become the subject matter expert in doing all your research and analysis. If it's not you, the prime business owner, to make sure that you are truly understanding what that means and get into the research to be able to figure out how it applies to you. So
that's great. That's really helpful. And I know The province you mentioned, there's regular announcements coming out. They had limited gatherings to 10 people as of midnight this morning, but also deferring taxes there as well. So there are deferral options. I believe it's up to 10,000, but that information as well, we'd encourage you to go check out Chamber of Commerce, EDW website, as well as Downtown Winnipeg BIZ. We're trying to link you to all of the relevant information and the supports and programs available as they do change daily. We have another question here that I'd like to put to the panel, and Jose, maybe we'll start with you. It's from Jason at Edison Properties. And he's asking, what is the best way for all hospitality properties to unite and work together? He's worried that once the dust settles, hotels will be mass promoting discounts and undercutting each other to try and snag business. And we know one of the things that Winnipeggers do well is work together. So are there ideas about the collaboration that businesses can be doing right now? Any thoughts on that, Jose?
Well, I do believe that there is, I'll call it a hospitality network in Winnipeg. So I think it's important to continue with that. Going back to some of Jay's earlier comments is that people are going to remember those that that did things honestly and with integrity. And so I think to be able to collaborate together, to come up with a plan, going back to hospitality is more than just hotels. It is the restaurants, it's the events that are going to be coming in. We've heard of a lot of deferrals of different events. And so I think that you should be collaborating, taking this time right now to say, how are we going to come back if it's 60 days, if it's 90 days, and looking at if there are programs that you could establish collaboratively that would allow for a slow entry back into the economy.
And Satya, you wanted to add something as well?
Yeah, the three resources I would that spring immediately to mind for restaurant owners. Manitoba Restaurant Food Association, the MRFA, you should be talking to them right now, see if they've got details. For hotel owners, the Hotel Association of Manitoba, you absolutely should be talk to them right now and see if they've got ideas. And lastly, and one of the best resources in Winnipeg and Manitoba is EDW, Economic Development Winnipeg, Tourism Manitoba are phenomenal people. They've got their stuff and they're good to go. So I would definitely have a chat with them. I think the tourism timeline and the service industry timeline is going to require a startup. So even if we're out of this in 30 days, 60 days, 90 days, whatever the program is, you're looking at a curve to restart. You're not going to start at where you left off. So if you're doing 100 guests a day when this all started here in Winnipeg or in Canada, if you will, on the 10th or the 12th, you're not going to start at that number over there. So be ready for that as well, and whatever strategy you require on that side, be ready to implement there.
And Jose, you wanted to add another point?
Yeah, I wanted to add something a little bit more generic in all of these negotiations. Emotions are going to be running hot. And I think that there might be some times where if you are going to be negotiating with a group of people or bringing people together, now's the time to probably plan these conversations, perhaps consider having a facilitator or a mediator present as well that's not involved, so that they can keep the calmness and the structure of the conversations. I think it's going to be, that'll be very important moving forward as well.
And I think collaboration really is key when we look at, we're working closely with the Chamber and EDW, and we're all trying to figure out how we can support businesses without duplicating efforts. I know we also have partners in the Manitoba Hotel Association and the Manitoba Restaurant Association, and Sean Jeffrey from the Restaurant Association wanted to mention that him and Scott from the Hotel Association will definitely be working with the membership to ensure that we all work together so businesses can thrive and succeed. So we're already seeing that collaboration that Winnipeggers do so well, because we've said time and time again, right, we're all in this together, but we're really seeing that without supporting one another and coming together as a community, I think that's where, if we do that, we can set ourselves up for success when we're looking these potentially 90 days out, more or less. We have another question here that I'd like to put to the panel from Marcus. Is business continuity leadership necessarily the same as the leadership group owners of an organization, or could it be a mix thereof? So I think the question is maybe around responsibility, or where does that best sit, I think is the way I'm reading it. And Marcus, if I don't have your question quite right, please feel free to jump in here again for any clarification. Jose, you wanted to start?
Sure. I mean, leadership is not a title. Leadership is a behavior. And so absolutely, if you want to be part of the business team, your employer-employee group, and you want to take some initiative, I think it's very important for people to take some initiative. And if you are working remotely, I think that the communication of that initiative is important as well, to Kate's point earlier, so you're not duplicating efforts within the same organization. So business continuity leadership can come, through the innovation that you would have within your own role in the organization. Absolutely.
That's a great point. We have another question here from Sheila asking about small businesses. Have any been able to discuss rent with landlords? I think we started talking about that a little bit off the top, and it is a real challenge. We know rents are due, and Sachin, I think you mentioned it at the beginning, of having that conversation with your landlord. At the same time, it can be extremely challenging for landlords. They have payments due, and so building owners also have payments to do, or payments due. And so it's trying to find what works for both parties, and I think everyone's trying to figure out a solution. Sachin?
So absolutely. So two of the biggest costs, again, I'm talking to the small business owners out there, two of the biggest costs you're going to be having are certainly going to be your rent and any loans that you may have taken upon yourself for business startup. So those are two areas that you really want to talk to. And I know that AC, you jumped in a little bit earlier and talked about deferring on that side. Now, again, deferral doesn't mean abatement. It just means you've got to pay it a little bit later. On the rental side, and speaking on the landlords, a deferral also doesn't mean abatement. Deferral means that you are giving your business an opportunity through these really challenging times to navigate those times, and those months that aren't collected, whether it's 1, 2, or 3, can be tacked on to the end of the lease on the other side, when things are back to normal again, right? So it's not necessarily a lose situation, it's a win-win situation, just pushed down the road, as we all are right now during these times. So the bottom line being on it, you do have to have that conversation as a small business owner. As a landlord, I would say to you, if you've got a good tenant right now and you've had a good tenant there for years, what's it worth to you to ensure that that tenant is going to be there for years to come down the road? And having been around quite a few landlords over the years, I can tell you that finding a good tenant is hard. And so I know that most landlords are very good and they will do their best to keep good tenants.
That's a great point. We're just nearing the end. We've got 7 minutes left, so time for maybe 1 or 2 more questions if anyone has a burning question that they'd like to ask the panel. We have another one here from Uriel. And I think this is a really interesting concept to think about, and something that definitely at Downtown Winnipeg BIZ, we are already having this conversation about what does that recovery plan and promotion look like on the other side of it. So the question here is, someday this will be over, and I think that's really important, right? That we do have hope as we're all figuring this out. We don't always know what to expect, but someday this will be over and the people will be incredibly eager to travel and to be outside. And maybe this is the moment to start working to promote local business even more than before. Is that considered as a potential plan of action to increase the volume, that maybe we are doing even greater promotion outside of our city, outside of our province, of the great and unique things that we do have here?
I mean, that's a great point. I think people should do that. Jay, I think, was going to speak. It's more of a, no?
Mike there, so, okay, yeah. I don't know the name of the person that put that question in, but the answer is recovery starts now, while we're in the middle of the response. So it doesn't start when the doctors say everyone's healthy and it's time to rebuild. Recovery starts now. So we've talked about it. Both panelists have talked about communicating with your staff, communicating with the people that you do business with, getting your message out. Right now, it's about thinking about your branding and your messaging and how you can continue to talk and get out there in the community. You might not be able to sell or make any money, but you can keep your visibility up. You can refresh your webpage. You can get your staff to help with some volunteer. For $100, you can buy a bunch of t-shirts and your team can go out and do some volunteer work while using social distancing and help people out. You can keep your name out there. Recovery starts right now. Please do not think recovery starts when somebody says we can do this in 2 months. Your planning needs to start now. And if you don't, you're not going to be first out of the gate. You need to stay in touch with your customers. I know I have a buddy who owns a restaurant in downtown Winnipeg and is suffering as well. And, you know, he's already got his plans in place about how he's going to be sending out specials and messaging to all of his catering customers and stay connected with them right now. So so that when he can reopen, he's going to try and be first out of the gate. Recovery starts now.
That's great. Yeah.
If I can add, we've talked a lot about the hospitality, and certainly there's a lot of hospitality in the downtown biz area, but there's also a lot of trades as well, trade businesses and those types of things. And so they've been very impacted as well by this, I like to call it physical distancing more than social distancing. And so they've really had to adapt the way they work, and in some cases can't do the work. And so as this continuity and the rebuilding starts, we're going to find a backlog of some services as well that people need to plan for as well. So just in terms of when you turn the water back on, you know, sometimes it sputters and spits out, and then sometimes it just comes out like a fire hose. And so each business will have its own startup again, and some of it will trickle and some of it will just explode. And so I think that you have to envision that as well, and not, I don't want to say don't lose your optimism. So be optimistic, but be realistic in that optimism. You know, when restaurants are going to open again, to Sachet's point earlier, is that people will have had a hit on their pocketbooks as well. And so the first thing they might not be to go and eat out. It'll still be viewed as perhaps a luxury item. So perhaps modifying the menu, making it a little bit more affordable, less extravagant. So I think people have to be creative in some of that, you know, in the reopening.
That's great, Jose. And we're just, we've got 2 minutes left here to the end of the hour. It is incredible how fast it's gone. Sachet, just any last points on your end, thinking about, is there anything else that you think is important right now that businesses should be thinking about, or anything else that you would like to see on your end being a business owner?
Listen, I've said this before, it's not my first time. If you're a small business owner, you got into this, whether it's hospitality or retail or consulting or management somewhere, you got into it because you have a talent for it, because you're good at it, and there's a demand for it, and you've got that passion. Remember that, keep that. That's exactly what's going to drive you into the next 30, 60, and 90 days as we start, and that everything that it takes. I know as Manitobans and as Winnipeggers and Canadians, we are resilient. We will absolutely get through this. We've been through so much before this all, and including this. So I know that we will all band together. You're seeing it now. We're all coming together as a community, doing all these different things that it takes to make sure that we're all safe, that our loved ones are safe, and that there will be a tomorrow on this. And I know there will be. So, you know, my last message to you all will be take care of yourselves, be safe, be well. And when you're ready, come see me at the restaurant. I'll be here for you.
I think that's a great note to end on. And again, to Jay's point as well, that recovery does start now. And that's why we put this together, just to have a conversation and discuss about what you can be doing as a business right now. There's some of the things to be thinking about. I know it is an extremely stressful time and there are so many questions. I've always said, you know, we may be the expert on downtown at Downtown Winnipeg BIZ, but we don't have all these other answers. So I want to thank our panelists, Sachet Mehra, Jay Shaw, and Jose Lemoyne for joining us today and providing your thoughts on business continuity and how businesses can be successful and set themselves up as we get to the other side of this. I also want to thank True North for getting us set up here at Bell MTS Place. It is a very quiet building here today, and there's just about 2 of us that I've seen around, but definitely want to extend our gratitude to get us set up so we can provide this webinar for you. And later today, you will be receiving a follow-up email with a link to this webinar. It is being recorded, so you can watch it again if there's any points or share it with others that may not have been available to join. It is free for all businesses in Winnipeg. We want to make sure that we are supporting everyone. We are in this together. And as I mentioned earlier as well, the Winnipeg Chamber of Commerce and Economic Development Winnipeg are putting really great resource kits on their websites and also doing some great advocacy work as well for your business. We are all here to help you get through this. So if there are follow-up questions, please feel free to reach out. It is really important about doing the things now so we can get to the other side of this. We know it's not going to be easy. I have hope as well. We talked about being optimistic and hopeful, I think is really important as a community. And I personally look forward to the day that I can welcome everyone back to downtown Winnipeg. Thank you very much. Thank you again to our panelists. Take care, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks very much, everyone.
Bye.
See you guys.